And you didn't tell anyone? Why
No.
not? Why not?
You know, I've spent my entire life organizing for farm workers, okay? I didn't want to do anything, and I knew Cesar was probably the only person that I had ever met that could really do the job to organize workers.
She left others open because she thought the movement was more important than protecting women. And I'm sorry, but I just don't see it that way. I think that if that kind of thing happens to you and you're a co-founder, you should know that other women that are more vulnerable, less powerful than you are definitely going to be in danger, because if he doesn't draw the line at you, who actually has a position within the movement, then he definitely isn't going to draw a line with them.
Now to a deeply disturbing story about longtime civil rights leader Cesar Chavez.
Okay, so supposedly Cesar Chavez was a rapist, no pun intended. But I'm gonna be 100% honest when I say I don't stand for any of these binaires we're gonna be talking about today, even though I know some people would say these are my people because they also happen to be Mexican American. I say no, and I say I don't think that anybody in power in this situation has clean hands, and don't think that there's no part of me that doesn't realize that this is partly a post-mortem political hit job. Because when you have a guy that you've been holding up as a left-wing Latino American hero.
For decades, the late Cesar Chavez, who died at age 66 in 1993, was a civil rights icon. A champion of farm workers and hero to millions of Latinos.
That has streets named after him, schools named after him, libraries named after him, buildings named after him, and then people are digging up videos of him saying stuff like this.
And so the workers themselves, even though a lot of them are Mexican descendancy themselves, are very uptight and very, very worried and very mad about the illegals coming to break their strikes, and it takes away their jobs, their livelihood, and so forth.
What's that? Illegals were having a negative effect on American workers, and more specifically Mexican American workers? I don't think that really goes with the left-wing narrative.
Does that put you in an uncomfortable position to be against the illegal immigrants because they are from Mexico? In other words, part of your program has been an appeal to equal treatment of people of Mexican origin.
Oh yeah, sure, but we're speaking of the legal ones.
Wait a second. It's almost like he's saying that there's a difference between legal Mexicans and illegal Mexicans. That doesn't sound like it goes with the left-wing narrative either. And before we go any further, let me introduce you to Dolores Huerta, because Dolores Huerta is trying to come in like a hero right now herself, and I'm not having it.
How could you?
Actually, how could you, Dolores? Because when we get into what I think your part was in all of this, I think people are going to realize you have a lot of nerve trying to point your fingers anywhere else but at yourself. And if you don't know who Dolores Huerta is...
She's the iconic labor leader and civil rights activist who co-founded the United Farm Workers.
With Cesar Chavez. What's up, everybody? So like I was saying in the beginning, right now Cesar Chavez is in a lot of trouble. But the problem with that is Cesar Chavez has already been dead for 33 years. So I guess you can cancel him, but I don't know how much it's really going to affect his life. But this is one of those stories where things seem a little bit off. And this is where I really do believe that more than one thing can be true. And before anybody gets mad at me or thinks that either of these people were any of my heroes, understand I didn't come from that kind of family. We did not worship Cesar Chavez growing up. We did not care anything about Dolores Huerta. But I do think that it's important when you're a person like me that really does believe in calling people to the carpet, that when your people are involved, you definitely hold them to the same standard you would hold anybody else to. And before anybody gets mad at me or anybody forms any real opinions, please understand that I have put together a lot of receipts, so I hope you'll go ahead ahead and hear me out till the end, because while I do believe that Cesar Chavez is guilty to a degree of what he's been accused of, I think that people like Dolores Huerta and some of the others in his organization, as well as some of our political figures that are currently denouncing him, were a part of the cover-up. And I think the actual victims in this story are the women that were told to keep their mouths shut when all of this was going on. And so not only do I think that this is happening because Cesar Chavez is no longer politically valuable to them, I also think somebody's getting their pockets lined on the back end of all of this, because to me, it makes no sense that for all these years, they've been painting him as a saint and a hero. And then the minute the New York Times decides to do a story on this, suddenly everybody's willing to cop to the fact that he was this horrible monster. So let's get into it.
Now, 3 women, including his closest associate, allege that Chavez was a predator.
Okay, so when they say 3 women, including one who was his closest associate, the 2 that were not his closest associate, I definitely do believe. But the one that was his closest associate, which would be Dolores Huerta, I definitely do not believe. But I also do want to be very clear that I think it's very convenient that they're canceling him 33 years after his death. And I think a big part of that is because they realize they can no longer use him to push their open border agenda when there is footage of him saying stuff like this.
This question of the illegals I find very interesting. Would you say that it's, at this particular moment, as important as any of the other problems facing the union?
Oh, yes. In the last 3 weeks, the last 2 weeks, it has become an emergency for us. There's an awful lot of illegals coming in by the hundred, by the thousands. Our people are not only in some of the crews where there is now strike breaking. Some of those crews are 100% illegals, outright, openly, with no attempt to disguise it. And so it's so bad now that we estimate 60 to 70% of the farm workers in California, of the resident worker, of the citizen, is out of a job because of those backs. They're coming in by the thousands, just unbelievable.
Not exactly a pro-illegal stance. And I saw some people online that were absolutely appalled because he used the term back. But I'm a Mexican American, and I can tell you that as Mexican Americans, we use the term wetback quite a bit. And I know some people are going to be like, that's racist. Well, none of you say it's racist when black people use the N-word, so zip it on that part and move on. Because the point I'm trying to make here is that back when Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and the rest of the crew at United Farm Workers were trying to actually unionize, Mexicans from Mexico were coming along and being scabs and ruining everything for everybody. And this is something that continues to this day. And the people that they screw are their own. And when I say their own, I mean the other illegals. I'll give you guys an example. Here in Arizona, every once in a while, they try to organize what they call a day without a Mexican. When they ask all of the illegals not to work for a day so everybody could see exactly how much everything would be affected and how many things would shut down if none of the illegals showed up to actually work. And it never fails that on those days, there are always Mexicans at the Home Depot and the regular spots to get whatever work that the other Mexicans that have decided to actually participate in a day without a Mexican aren't able to do, because they're trying to show exactly how this would impact the economy. So when you know this and you see that they'll even screw their own, even if that's gonna in the long run hurt them, it really does make you not feel very sympathetic to these people at all, because they can't even stay out of their own way when it's to their own benefit. So why should I care about you more than you care about yourselves? But let's go on, because I want to get to the actual allegations and why everything's happening the way that it's happening right now.
Ed O'Keefe is in Washington with the story. Ed, this is a terrible, horrific story. Good morning.
It sure is, Vlad. Good morning. The woman who co-founded the United Farm Workers movement with Cesar Chavez, 95-year-old Dolores Huerta, now alleges that Chavez, quote, manipulated and pressured and then later forced her against her will to have sex with him in the 1960s, fathering 2 children.
Now, one thing that they curiously don't mention about this victim, Dolores Huerta, is that she was also in a long-term relationship but not married, to Cesar Chavez's brother Richard. And from that relationship came 4 children, and that relationship lasted from the 70s until 2011 when Richard passed away. Now keep in mind, they just said the alleged incident happened in the 60s, so she got together with his brother in the 70s. And just to be thorough in my reporting, including the 2 children that she had with Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta had a total of 13 children. And this isn't to say that a woman that has that many children can't be SA'd or can't be raped. I only pointed out because I know some people are very up on this history and they're going to mention it because that's one of the things that's bothering a lot of people online, is they're not mentioning a lot of this stuff about Dolores Huerta. And while I don't think that that means that a woman can't say no or can't be SA'd, at the same time, it does seem a little bit off that after being R-worded by somebody, you would end up being with their brother, and there wouldn't be any kind of tension with you continuing to work with the brother that had allegedly R-worded you, and it wouldn't make an uncomfortable situation for you and your current that you now have 4 children with and basically are raising a family with. And for anybody that may be wondering why she didn't terminate the 2 pregnancies from her rapist, this is the explanation that she gave when talking to John Quinones from ABC.
Huerta says she became pregnant twice by Cesar Chavez, choosing to hide her pregnancies from the public and arranging for the children to be raised by other families.
And in your case, those 2 sexual assaults, you became pregnant.
Yes.
Both times.
Okay, does anybody else think that the timing on that is just a little bit crazy? I mean, she got SA'd by him exactly twice, and both times she got pregnant. What are the odds?
Yeah, that was when abortion was illegal. I, as a good Catholic, thought that birth control was a sin. I thought that abortion was a sin. I have since changed my mind on those issues.
But as a good Catholic, you didn't think your 2 divorces were a sin? And you also didn't think that having relations with his brother out of wedlock for all those years was a sin? Or how about living with his brother for all those years out of wedlock? If I remember correctly, that's what they used to call living in sin.
Huerta said she kept the secret for 60 years, fearing exposing the truth would hurt the farm worker movement. She spoke out Wednesday after 2 other women alleged to the New York Times they were sexually abused by Chavez in the 1970s when they were just 12 and 13 years old.
Now, I definitely do believe the 2 other women that were just girls at the time. And let me read to you a little bit of why. So this is an excerpt from Our Weekly Los Angeles. The story quotes a woman who says Chavez took her into his office when he was 45 and she was 13, kissed her, and pulled her pants down. She said dozens of encounters followed over the next 4 years, though she says none involved intercourse. Another woman says she was 12 when Chavez groped her breast and 15 when he arranged to have her stay at a motel during a march through California and had intercourse with her. Both women were the daughters of organizers who had marched in rallies alongside Chavez, according to the Times. The story claims that Chavez used other women in the farm labor movement for sexual gratification. The Times said accounts of alleged abuse of the 2 then minors were independently verified through interviews with those they confided in decades ago and also in more recent years. Elements of their stories were also corroborated in documents, emails, itineraries, and other writings from union organizers, supporters of Chavez, and historians, the story says. And the reason that I believe these 2 women who were girls at the time is because they say that they actually did come forward back then, or at least told people that were close to them, but they were urged to stay quiet by others in the movement.
The pair said Chavez and other union leaders urged them to keep quiet.
And all of that really tracks for me, because what you have to remember is that back then there was no Me Too movement, and there was absolutely no benefit to these 2 girls making this up. Because something that people really don't think about from back in those days is that back in those days, women, no matter how young, were not taken seriously when they would say things like this. And not only were they not taken seriously, in a lot of cases, they were seen as having been asking for it or being loose women for letting that happen. And when I say for letting that happen, that's not my wording and that's not my thinking, but that was a lot of the thinking of that that time. And I know this firsthand because I grew up in the tail end of that. And I had a few friends when I was younger that had been SA'd or outright raped. And they had been blamed for it for being sluts and for letting the guys do that to them. And they also ended up with worse reputations after. So again, I don't think that there would have been any benefit at that time for these two to lie about it. And if you're wondering why I don't believe Dolores Huerta, there's actually a couple reasons. The first one is when John Quinones outright asked her about it in so many words, this was her response.
It pains me to have to ask you this, but did Cesar Chavez?
What one could, how shall I put it? You can name it what you name it, whatever, you know. But I think when you are forced into a situation of unwanted sex or whatever, that I think you could, you know, you could consider it rape.
See, and I don't know about for anybody else, but to me, the wording on that just seems a little bit sketchy. It seems almost like she doesn't want to commit because she's not necessarily being truthful. Like she says, you can name it whatever you want to name it. No, if you're actually making the allegation, come out and actually say what it is you're trying to say. And I don't actually believe that she's too timid now to say it or was too timid back then, because let me share with you a clip from a monologue that she put out 7 years ago, so 2019.
I remember once I got a letter from one of this young, beautiful Latina farm worker who told me that one of our board members would not give her her money because he demanded that she have sex with him. And so I brought this letter to our board meeting and brought it out in front of all of our board members. And Cesar was furious. And he took that board member out of the meeting and took him for a long walk. I don't know what he told him, but I know that the guy was chastised when he got back. I mean, he looked very bad.
So in that story, she makes it sound like Cesar Chavez actually stood up for that woman that was having her money withheld because she didn't want to have sex with the guy. She told this story in 2019, which was peak Me Too time. That's about the same time that Harvey Weinstein was happening, and Cesar Chavez had already died way back in 1993.
Chavez died in 1993.
So that monologue was from 26 years after Cesar Chavez had died. The monologue was literally about surviving sexual harassment in the workplace. And not only does she not even hint about that with Cesar Chavez, she makes it sound like he wouldn't stand for that, almost like he's a hero. Now let me play another clip for you from that same monologue.
One of the things I did too, at one of our board meetings, Cesar would say at the end of every meeting, does anybody have anything they want to add? And I said, well, what I had been doing is every time they made a sexist remark, I would make a little notch on my paper. And so I said, well, I just wanted to make an announcement that during the course of this meeting today, you guys have made 58 sexist remarks. And they were stunned. They were speechless, you know. They didn't know what to say. And then to the next meeting, we got them down to 20 and then 15 and 5. But they knew that I was keeping track. One of Cesar's security guards told me afterwards, before we go into a meeting, everybody checks themselves to make sure they're not going to say anything stupid.
So you mean to tell me that you're strong and assertive enough to take a tally and call people out on sexist remarks, but then your co-founder outright rapes you not once, but twice, and that's when you're too meek and timid to actually say anything? And not only are you too meek and timid to say anything, you continue to work with him for the rest of his life, and then 26 years later, you're still painting him as a hero in a monologue that's about sexual harassment in the workplace? I mean, call me crazy, but this really isn't adding up for me. And this monologue was also recorded after Cesar Chavez's brother, Richard, her longtime boyfriend, had died as well. So it couldn't have been like she didn't say it to protect him. And this is just 100% my opinion, but not only do I not think she's being honest, I feel like she was part of the cover-up. She didn't hear whispers. Those two, at the time, young women never came to her and talked to her about this, or nobody came to her and talked to her about this on their behalf. I mean, in the first story, she says that when the guy was withholding the young woman's pay for favors, that she stepped in and she's the one that went ahead and handled that and let Cesar know about it. And you know people talk, and you know if that story really happened, that had to have gotten around. So I'm sure that most people would think that if she did that, she would at the very least be some sort of advocate for the other women. But I also wouldn't blame the girls if they never took it to her, because it's like I always say, people really do have a blind spot when it's somebody that can either affect their money or somebody that they're particularly close with. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it really did happen to her. But if that's the case and she wouldn't even stand up for herself because she thought it would hurt the organization too much.
And you didn't tell anyone. Why?
No.
Why not?
You know, I've spent my entire life organizing for farm workers, okay? I didn't want to do anything. And I knew Cesar was probably the only person that I had ever met that could really do the job to organize workers.
So the damage of speaking up would be too much. It would hurt the movement too much.
Oh, absolutely. Can you imagine? I mean, the movement was built by hundreds of volunteers that came in. And even convincing the farm workers themselves that they had the power to build their own organization. It was very, very hard.
Then I guess she wouldn't be willing to do it for anybody else. And so to me, she left others open because she thought the movement was more important than protecting women. And I'm sorry, but I just don't see it that way. I think that if that kind of thing happens to you and you're a co-founder, you should know that other women that are more vulnerable, less powerful than you are definitely going to be in danger, because if he doesn't draw the line at you, who actually has some sway, who actually has a position within the movement, then he definitely isn't going to draw a line with them. And that's one of the things that bothers me the most about Dolores Huerta staying quiet all this time, because she had to have known that. And that's a big part of why I think she's either lying or she's just trying to come forward now in order to save her ass and make herself sound like a hero that she really wasn't.
The United Farm Workers Union said the allegations are, quote, incompatible with our organization's values, and added it won't participate in any Cesar Chavez Day events scheduled for March 31st.
And this is another reason that I do believe the women, and I do believe that there was a huge cover-up. Because to me, if they didn't know that he had been guilty of doing what it is they're saying that he had done, then I don't think they would have put out a statement like this at all. I think they would have put out a statement saying that that didn't match with the person that they actually knew, and I think that they would have gone out of their way and fought to keep his memory from being tarnished and his legacy intact.
But cities and states, there are about 7 that recognize this holiday statewide, are already considering renaming scores of streets, schools, and even the recognition day itself. Fresno State University in California, for example, covered up this statue of Chavez in response to the reports. His family called the accusations deeply painful and said they wish peace and healing to the survivors. We carry our own memories of the person we knew, they added, someone whose life included work and contributions that mattered deeply to many people. Nate?
Yeah, thank you.
So honestly, on this one, I don't think that anybody that was in power in the movement has clean hands. And I think the only 2 actual victims in this situation are the 2 women who are now in their 60s. And I think Dolores is only coming out now because she's trying to cover her ass and kind of not get caught up in it. And I also think that Dolores felt a little undervalued, which she never said outright, but had alluded to in different interviews and statements in the past before any of this came out. And so now, even though she says she doesn't want to take that recognition, even though Cesar Chavez is being scrubbed from everything.
With recent demands to replace Cesar Chavez's name on schools, parks, and streets, Dolores Huerta says, don't name them after her.
I would say, don't worry, Dolores, we won't. But for the record, that's exactly what somebody that actually wanted that recognition would say. Oh no, I couldn't possibly. Well, I guess if you just wanted to put my name on it, I would be all right with it. I mean, I wouldn't turn it down. And I also wouldn't be at all surprised if she got kicked a couple extra dollars on top of whatever political help she's getting, because if you didn't know, Dolores Huerta is very pro-immigrant and has shown up at quite a few pro-immigrant rallies and given quite a few pro-immigrant speeches. So if I'm being 100% honest, I don't trust Dolores Huerta as far as I can throw her, And that's really where I'm at on it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Like, comment, subscribe, hype the video if you can. If you want to see a video of me talking about Magic Johnson's son, EJ, and how he thinks he's competing with women, click the link on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.